Crossing over the terminator line into an orbital sunset, still getting a little bit of light from the sun. Soon we'll transition to the International Space Station's lights, external lights, which will still illuminate a little bit of the HTV as it continues to approach its capture position, and we can monitor it. We're looking at about 9 or 10 meters away from the International Space Station for capture position, and we'll get confirmation of holding from the crew once it's there. European Space Agency astronaut Alexander Gerst standing by at the Cuckoo workstation that you're getting a view of. This is a view of the workstation from one of the cameras on board the International Space Station. At the bottom right, you can see VV to ISS. That is the range of HTV as it continues to get closer to the International Space Station and holding at a range rate of just about 0.02 meters per second. We might have about 4 more minutes of sunlight from the sun as it continues to set into an orbital nighttime. Still getting some nice views of HTV as we cross over the terminator line. Great high definition view of HTV as it continues to approach the International Space Station. Just about 14 meters away at this point, 0.02 meter per second towards its capture point, about 9 or 10 meters away. As it approaches, you can see some of those thrusters firing to orient itself into the right position. Make sure it's continuing that slow and steady pace in the right orientation. Might have about 1, maybe 2 minutes of sunlight before we switch to the space station's external lights. As it continues to approach, keep sending in your hashtag AskNASA questions. We'll be taking questions about HTV and the space station as it continues to approach. We have one from Melissa, who's asking on behalf of 5-year-old TJ, who wants to know if there's a steering wheel on the space station. So actually, the crew of the space station does have the ability to take control of the orientation and position of the International Space Station if necessary, but it's not part of their regular job. It's actually done from here in Mission Control Houston. There's several positions here, flight controllers, who monitor every aspect of the International Space Station, its systems, including the orientation. There's a position here called the Attitude Control Officer, or here it's called ADCO. They monitor the position of the space station, including its orientation, and have the ability to turn it or position it or even the solar rays if necessary. That's sort of the steering wheel portion of the International Space Station. They are monitoring, making sure the space station itself is in the right position, holding steady as HTV continues its approach to the International Space Station, now about 12 meters away from the station. Again, the capture point about 9 or 10 meters. We'll get confirmation of its hold once it arrives. Another question from hashtag AskNASA from Marshall Mello. Is the capture mechanism something akin to an electromagnet or more like a claw? So the capture mechanism is the robotic arm itself, the Canadarm2. At the end is something called a latching end effector, and from that you can sort of guess that it's more like a claw. There's a series of latches that are going to go over. From this position you can see it's kind of a circular disc with 3 prongs on it. That's where the actual latching end effector will actually go into. At the bottom you can sort of see from this HD view there's a line and sort of a black perimeter around that line. That's actually a pin, and the space station's crew will align the camera from the station's robotic arm. It's sort of pointing towards HTV at this point, but they'll align it with that pin and move in to capture it with those claw-like mechanisms. There's a series of stages for capture. Once a second stage capture is confirmed, that's when all the claws and everything have driven to secure that capture, and allows the robotic officers to take over from the crew who have just moved the robotic arm into capture the vehicle. The robotics officers will actually maneuver the arm itself and place the HTV right in front of its berthing port at the Earth-facing side of the Harmony module, which is at the front of the space station. The HTV is still approaching just over 10 meters away, still in an approach configuration. In the meantime, continue to send in those questions using the hashtag AskNASA. HTV still approaching, just under 10 meters away at this point. HTV and International Space Station in orbital nighttime right now. You're seeing the views, the cargo vehicle and robotic arm lit from the external lights of the International Space Station.